Hello guys, welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to be talking about drawing hair. This is something that's been requested a couple of times, so hopefully it's useful to you. Obviously this is a tutorial about drawing hair in my style, which is a cartoony style. It's not a tutorial about drawing realistic hair, though obviously you will need to have background knowledge of drawing realistic hair to be able to proceed in making it into a stylized form and simplifying it down to whatever suits your way of working. As you can see, I've got two of my drawings here. If you're new to my channel and you haven't seen my artwork before, here is some of my artwork, and then hopefully that will help you to decide if this video is useful to you or if you're looking at this and thinking this isn't really for me. So what's most important to me is simplifying the hair down, which is completely the opposite of what I used to do when I was younger. So when I was younger, I'm gonna get a drawing that I've got sitting around here, and what I used to do was just draw loads of strands like this, and I wasn't focusing on an overall shape. And basically what you want to do is to build up the outer shape before you go into any detail. Whoa, I did not mean to do that. Let's take that off. There we go. Let's not try and delete my entire drawing in the next demo. So basically what you want to be able to do is split the hair down into larger chunks and then build up from there. So you can see with this piece on the left, I'm gonna just get a bright colour so you can see, and you've got the hair at the front here, then the bit that goes just behind his face here, so this is in shadow, so that's on the other side, then you've got that section there, another section of his fringe coming down here, and then you've got the rest at the back, and you've got more just hanging down there in shadow. So you can see that is easily split into manageable sections instead of just going like this. And again with Vin over here, this is my friend Liz's character, his hair is split into these large sections at the front, which are then much more manageable. So the key is to make your picture manageable, because there's no point in making your drawing process complicated. That's one of the most basic important things I think I can teach you guys, is that there's no reason to make your drawing process more difficult than it needs to be. I'm actually going to go to this one first because Sarah has straight long hair which just sort of hangs straight down. So we'll start with this and then we can go into different types of hair. So we've got just here the hairline, and remember this will be further forward on some characters and further back on others. Again, study real people and see how they look, and that will be something that can build into the personality of your character and how they're portrayed. So we've got Sarah's hairline just here, and then you want to decide whether your character has a centre parting or a side parting. So Sarah has a side parting, and what I'm going to do is build up some volume. So instead of bringing the line straight down like this, I've just brought it up so the hair is coming up away from the head and then coming down. And like I said, we're going to break this into sections. So there's one section, and we're going to give it a little bit of weight here, just going behind her ear, and we're going to do the same with the other side. Now once you've got that section, then you can add in the strands. You can do this later or you can do it as you go. I like to do it as I go. So just like this. Obviously it's going to be different when you're doing your line art, but as a guideline I like to do it like this. And I personally like to bring the strands the whole way through that chunk of hair. I don't like to do that and just kind of leave it. I feel it's disjointed, but that's a personal stylistic choice. So to emphasize the effect of the hair flowing, I like to draw the line the entire way through. So then we'll just build up some more. Now in front of the ears, your hair can get a bit wispy. So sometimes you can add a little bit of character by just sort of doing that. I think that's kind of cute. And then from there we're going to add some more. So Sarah's hair is straight, but it's very thick. And a good way to emphasize this is to vary the thickness of the hair as you go down. So instead of just drawing it like this, you can do this and create the effect of thickness where the hair is flowing around itself. So you can see here there's lines crossing over always think about where the hair is coming from and where it's going. So for example, this bit is at the front, this bit here is at the front, this bit is kind of coming from behind it and flowing in front as it goes further down. So there you go. That's two pieces of hair entwined together. So always kind of make the hair interact with itself, if that makes sense. Make it twist around itself and give it motion. And I think that's another thing that's very important, is to make it dynamic. So we're just going to carry on like this. Another good way is to draw the hair draping across the shoulder. So it's going to be coming down like this, and then just kind of flowing over the shoulder like that. To make it look heavier, you can add more strands like this. If it's very fine hair, you might just have a couple of odd wispy bits floating around there. So then we're just going to carry on from there, bearing in mind maintaining that effect of movement within the hair all the way down. And I don't really like to draw a character's hair just kind of sitting there doing nothing. I like it to bring out the aspect of the character's personality. This is another really important thing that you can do when drawing hair. It does change the viewer's opinion of your character, and it can really have a huge impact, and so it's a hugely important tool to use. So with Sarah, her hair is quite relatively plain in terms of character design. She doesn't have anything crazy going on, but that doesn't mean it has to be boring. So what I try and do is to bring life into her hair. So whatever she's doing, I just kind of make it flow around her and just have a little bit of a bounce to it. Don't forget the flyaways. That's another thing that's really useful to just add as a finishing touch. So you might have a couple of strands of hair just escaping like this. Obviously if your character is very well presented and very neat and tidy, they will have less of those. If they're stressed or it's the end of the day, then they'll probably have a lot more flyaways. So that's a general idea there of how I would draw straight hair that's kind of just flowing generally, with nothing particular happening to it. So then what we're going to do is move on to thicker hair that's in a ponytail, and you'll be able to see this kind of picture here. This is my character Taryn, and I've used his hair to reflect aspects of his personality. So you can see where I've circled here, there's parts of his hair that are just sticking straight up and doing whatever they want, and that is a useful way of reflecting the rebellious parts of his personality. And basically, yeah, Taryn doesn't behave, and so neither does his hair. And also you can see here where I've circled around this section at the bottom, he's got very heavy hair, very thick hair that's escaping from whatever this is that he's attempted to put it in. And I'm going to show you how to create that effect of making the hair actually look like it has real weight. So this is Steve. This is another character from Wired. Steve has very thick, unruly hair. So again, what I'm going to do is just mark out the hairline so the hair isn't just floating around aimlessly. And then from there, I'm going to mark out the sections that I want. And as it is part of my style, but also using sharp, jagged lines is good for emphasizing hair with this kind of rough texture. Do whatever you need to do in your sketch to make it clear to yourself what's going on. I mean, if you want, you can shade out these sections so that you can figure out what's going behind the character's head and what's going in front of it. The sketch is just for you, always remember that. Even if you're recording your videos, the sketch is for you, and as long as you can figure it out, then it doesn't matter what's going on with it. So then again, I'm just going to put that bit that kind of falls behind the ear, but then also we're going to have some falling in front. And I'm going to just vary the thickness of the hair as it goes down, because we're seeing it from a different angle. As it falls onto their shoulder, it just spreads out a little bit like that. And you can see the weight being portrayed there. So always remember that if the hair is very heavy, draw straight lines to portray it being dragged downwards, but then you can add some stragglers afterwards. You can see that I kind of build it up as I go, so a lot of the time I will draw a strand and then I'll be like, it's not big enough. and I'll add some more because I really like drawing big 90s anime hair. That's just what I'm into. And then at the back, to portray the thickness of this hair, I'm actually going to bring it right out from the shape of the head. So you can see the shape of the head is here. I'm going to bring the back out here. And then what you would do if you were portraying thin hair in a ponytail would be something like this. So the hair is just being pulled straight back into the ponytail, no issue, it's not fighting the ponytail. Whereas Steve's hair is most definitely fighting the ponytail, much like Taryn's. So what we're going to do is draw much thicker strands like this and hanging down, so you can see that they are pulling on the hairband or whatever it is that's holding it in place. And I'm going to add a sort of quirky little bit there, a bit like Taryn's again, just sticking out. And then I'm going to make the hair kind of go in every direction here, and there's going to be a lot of it. So you can draw some strands just here that still look like they were meant to go in the ponytail and they didn't quite make it. So just like that, and then carry on down here where I have decided to just not sketch any further apparently, because I just drew a headshot and that was it. And then up the top I'm going to just go back in, add some details, little bit of flicky bits of hair up there, and also to add some personality, Steve has some beads in their hair, so we're just gonna put those in like that so I remember where they are later on. And I'm gonna colour that in as well so we can actually see the character a little bit better. Oops. I'm sorry, I moved all the express keys around on my Cintiq and now I keep pressing the wrong thing. Yes, so there is the demonstration of drawing thicker, more uncontrollable hair that's been pulled back into a loose ponytail. Next we're going to draw a braid. So we have my sketch here of Vex and Vax from Critical Role, who work pretty well for this demo. So I'm just going to turn the opacity down on that so I can show you more clearly what I'm doing. And when you're drawing a braid, remember the sections that lead up to the braid. So we've got her hair just here is flowing into the braid. I've drawn Vex's rather. I've drawn Vex's hair very thick, so there's a lot of it being pulled into the braid, so it's all just being drawn into this one area here. And then we're gonna just draw the sections of the braid. There are many different types of braid, so I would do your research before you kind of settle on anything, but just always remember to keep it flowing into one another. So when you're drawing it, you have the hair going into it like that, and then you have your one strand, you have the next strand, like this. It's quite simple once you've broken it down, they just overlap, so you're just 1, 2, 1, 2. I sound like my optician. So there, you just have it overlapping like that. And so I'll show that a little bit better on Vex's braid. So it's not as scary as it seems when you break it down. And then we've got the rest of her hair. Again, it's just kind of, it's quite heavy. You're going to have some flyaways that didn't make it into the braid. I think it adds character if you just kind of add a couple of bits like this, especially if the character has been, again, if they've been active. And then we're just going to finish off with the, I don't know what you'd call this bit of hair at the end of a braid, but we'd finish off with this. And remember all the strands, remember where they're coming from, remember where they're going. They flow into each other, and like that. I'm sorry for flipping, I always just flip the canvas to make sure nothing looks out of place. And there's the braid. So again, you can see here what I've done with Vex is added that volume at the top of the hair just to add character, give it life, because even though she's just standing there, I don't want her to look plain. And similarly with Vax, he's got some braids in his hair just here, so we would just, if they're really small braids, quite frequently I will just do this, so it's just do 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 do. If you can understand what that noise means, I will, if it's a very small braid and it's really not worth adding all that detail, you can just do it like that, and that can look equally effective because the viewer isn't looking at that area of your drawing specifically. So it's, like I said, simplify things, don't waste time and details on things that the viewer is not going to notice. Now we're going to talk about curly hair. So this is my character Alora. She has very different hair to Sarah, and her hair is very thick, very curly. It's got a completely different texture, and so when you colour this as well, it will have a different look to straight, smooth hair. So this is important to look at lots of references again to make sure you know what you're doing, but generally if you build up the bulk of the shape and then just add some stragglers, Alora's hair is quite wiry, so we're going to maintain those sharp angles as we build it up. Again, the best thing that I can emphasize is just research, research, research. I know I don't talk enough about observational drawing on this channel, I fully acknowledge that. That's my own fault. But it is very important. You can't learn how to draw something until you actually really look at it and draw it and put that knowledge into your memory, and then the next time it becomes easier, and then the next time easier still, and so on. And then from there we can just add in a few strands to emphasize the hair flowing around itself, but again the texture will be very dense, so it's going to be different to portraying the straight hair. Yeah, as a side note, I know I said I have curly hair, and you've probably seen me in one of my previous videos and I don't seem to have that curly hair, but I straighten it. So as a side note, if your character straightens their hair and their hair is naturally curly, it will still have quite a wiry texture. That doesn't go away when you straighten it. It will reflect the light more because it will be smoother, but there will always be a certain degree of wiriness. There are sections of my hair that kind of just stick out and are wispy, and it obviously depends on the hair type, but for me my hair is quite curly, and so it does tend to retain that wiry texture. So there's the curly hair. The key thing to remember, it has more volume than straight hair. Most of it is densely packed with looser strands towards the ends, and it doesn't reflect as much light. It tends to absorb the light. Now we're going to demonstrate some shorter, spikier hair, and this is going to be a bit different because we're just going to have the hair kind of flowing forwards from a point, and we want to avoid the kind of straight up, like that's not really coming from any point of the head look. So I'm just going to mark off this guy's hairline just here, and then always remember the shape of the head and where the hair is flowing from. So it doesn't make any sense to have bits of hair kind of going off in the other direction. They'll always be following that path where they're growing from. You can add some kind of tufts just at the back there, just to add some character. And then we'll just bring it down to the back of the neck where we'll have a few more flyaways just down here. And then that has kind of been trimmed short, which I just use some straight lines like that to emphasize. And I'm going to erase some of my excess lines to make that a bit clearer for you. So all of this is flowing forwards from the same point. If you wanted to make the hair slightly longer, you can always play around with the hair in front of the ears, such as this. I have a tendency to give these to a lot of my characters, whatever they are, these little mini sideburns. You could make the fringe a little bit longer. And just keep it all flowing from the same point. You can add some overlaps, so you have, for example, this bit going this way and then you have this bit going this way. But just don't have it kind of going in the opposite direction like that, because that doesn't make any sense, because it just wouldn't flow in that direction. So there's a kind of shorter, slightly spikier haired look, if that's the kind of thing that you're going for. Another variation on a shorter style, or partly shorter, is the side shave. So here we have a sketch of my character Riker that I did a while back, and Riker has his hair shaved on one side. So you can see here, his parting is slightly on the side. So here we've got where you can see almost through to the scalp where it's shaved short. Because it's a side parting, you've got hair that would be on the other side of the head in a centre parting over to the left. So we've got to add that volume and really make it effective. So because he's just thrown this section of hair over here, we've got it kind of with these lines emphasising the thickness just here, and from there it just flows downwards over his shoulder. And because it's sticking up in this way, it's got a few flyaways. He's got some strands at the back here. He might have a couple of flyaways just there, and that just helps to emphasize that contrast between the very short section and the much longer section just there. So obviously with this style, it's very important that you have a good knowledge of where the hairline is, you have a good knowledge of how closely shaved it is, any wispy strands, any escaping bits, and all the, just generally the way that the hair falls depending on how it's styled. Now for a short bob type hairstyle, such as the kind that I've drawn on this picture of Jester from Critical Role, this is relatively simple, but when you're marking out the ends of the hair, you've got quite a sharp line going on here to just portray the way that the hair curves around, but then you can kind of use negative space to break that up with some shapes here that will indicate where the gaps in the hair are. Because if you just draw the hair like this, there's no variety, there's no visual interest, and one of the most important things is maintaining visual interest in your picture. So if you just add a little bit of detail, it doesn't have to be much, just breaking it up a little bit, it adds movement and it adds interest. So that will instantly make the style look more dynamic. Up at the top here you can see where I've indicated the parting. So she's got a centre parting here, and then I have just used these strands here to indicate the volume of the hair going outwards and across to the other side of her head. And I've used thinner lines for the strands on the inside than the outside, just to indicate the thickness of the hair. And finally, we couldn't have a video talking about hair without talking about whatever is going on with Jacob's hair. So his hair is not quite curly, but it's wiry and it's very unruly. So we're going to see here, it's got a lot of jagged lines. I use the most jagged lines when I'm drawing Jacob's hair. So you can see when I ink this, I will use very sharp lines. And it's got, again, the two sections just at the front here. And he's got a slight side parting, so his hair goes over one eye more than the other. So again, that's a kind of personality aspect you can add in. And then what I do is just build up the bulk of the shapes, and then at the end I will add in flyaways. He's got quite a lot of these straggly, wiry strands just coming out from the ends. And it's always fun to kind of play around, if your character's in motion, play around with emphasizing those strands and just letting them kind of fly up in the air and flow. Make sure they're always flowing in the same direction, but you can kind of have some fun with making them stand out from the rest. Now lastly, for the sketch stage, I'm going to show you how to draw wet hair, because I see this asked quite a lot, and wet hair can be tricky to get the hang of. And what I've learnt through observation is the way that wet hair sticks together. So we're using Taran for this, who you saw earlier, and his hair is very heavy anyway, but when it's wet it will clump together and stick to the skin. So instead of hanging down like this, it's actually going to stick to his neck. So you can see here I'm portraying the way that it's just sticking here with strands that are escaping from the rest and sticking to the skin. And when you colour this, it's going to have a lot of highlights. So it's going to be very slick. It's very flat to the body. And of course, because there's so much weight on it, it's not going to be sticking up quite so much at the top. So his hair is going to actually be quite flat for once. So we've got it fairly flat here. There's no real flyaways because it's all just stuck down and stuck together. Maybe one little flyaway there that's still fighting, and then the rest just doing the same thing. So just stuck together, stragglers just here, and I'm just going to do this to emphasize the highlights. So you will have, when you're colouring it, lots of highlights here. And when you're drawing it hanging down, most of it will be straight because of the weight of the hair, but you'll have a few just standing out like this, especially if the character's hair is thick or curly and so on. So finally, sorry for making this video so long, I'm just going to show you how I would then convert that sketch into line art, so then you can see the kind of details that I will choose to keep and the kind that I will get rid of in the final image. For me, I like to have these very smooth controlled lines, but I also like angular shapes, jagged edges and so on. So I kind of try to combine the two in my work. So with this picture, I will then just go in and start to pick out what details I want to keep. And I will usually emphasize the thickness of the line just on the corners, like that, where the line bends. I will usually try and emphasize that. Here you can see the hair folding over, so one strand goes behind, one goes in front, and I varied the thickness to make it more dynamic. This area is thicker because this is his fringe at the front. This is a slight side parting because the side of his hair is shaved. I try to connect up all the lines. I try not to leave anything just sort of hanging. I try to make everything flow into the rest of the image. Here I will be using some really jagged edges. This is great for movement because I really want to make it feel energetic, and I want to kind of convey the chaos that is Taran into the way his hair is moving. And then I will vary the size of my lines as well. So I will bring in some narrower lines just to add some visual interest again. So there's a quick example of how I would do the line art on this piece, and the lines that I would choose to keep and the ones that I would choose to get rid of from the sketch. It's not always possible to keep that sense of fluid motion from your sketch into your line art, but I try my best via the use of smooth lines and jagged edges and creating that nice contrast. And like I said, it's all about a combination of building visual interest and giving the hair on your character's personality and life and volume. So I really hope this video was useful to you. Please do let me know what you think, and if you have any ideas for what you would like me to do in the future. And as always, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!